Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatahu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And inshallah, today we're going to start in, I don't really want to call it a deep explanation, of course, because this is what the ulama are here for. However, we are going to derive, inshallah, we're going to derive some benefits that we can get from this amazing collection of hadith. Now, what we must understand is, to begin with, the importance of seeking knowledge. And we've all heard the well-known hadith that talk about the fact that seeking knowledge is obligation upon every Muslim, male and female. And without having this knowledge, how can we even practice our daily Islamic practices? And the scholars, they say, for example, that knowledge is sour, fihi marara, it is sour in the beginning. Seeking knowledge is sour in the beginning, or bitter, but beautiful and sweet at the end. And Imam Shafi'i, he had a statement where he said, whoever does not taste the bitterness of seeking knowledge, he will live his whole life with the bitterness of ignorance. So the main point here is that when you're trying to seek knowledge, there'll be a time of difficulty, a time of discomfort, a time of maybe even, I guess you could say, losing enthusiasm to continue. But this statement of Imam Shafi'i here, to start us off, is a very great statement, that if you do not at least taste the bitterness, meaning you don't start that seeking of knowledge and feel this bitterness and then stick at it so that you see the sweetness of seeking knowledge, then you in reality will live the bitterness of your whole life in ignorance. And we see, this book, many of the scholars, in the past, they compiled small books with very beneficial hadith of this kind of amount. Some did it in fiqh, some did it in matters that were completely related to tazkiyah or manners or morals. And this particular book, Al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, is an amazing book, which we'll go on to see inshallah, which compiled some of the best hadith when it came to the essential aspects and the essential parts of our religion. And I had the opportunity to go through this book when I was at university with one of my professors, may Allah have mercy on him, Imam Abdul Basit al-Rakani, and also had the chance to sit with one of the scholars who was visiting here in Dubai, the Sheikh Dr. Muhammad Hashim Tahari, who gave a very beautiful explanation of that. So I've taken these notes from these sittings that I sat with and made some bullet points, you could say, of some of the main points of benefit that we can, inshallah, get from this. Now, if we, without going into a detailed description or detailed biography, but Imam, Nawawi was someone who, from a very young age, strived to seek knowledge. When other children were eager to play, he was eager to go to the circles of knowledge. And we know that he has so many books for us to mention, so many books that he compiled that we can't even mention them. But in his very short life, he died around the age of 30. In his very short life, he was able to achieve so much in such a short period of time. Now, this book of Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, is actually 42 hadith. And later after, 8 more hadith were added by Ibn Rajab. Now we see, for example, somebody may say like, okay, if it was 42, then why wasn't it called the 42 hadith? Or if it was later 8 were added, why was it not called 50 hadith? 42 plus 8. But the scholars have said, first of all, Imam Rajab, when he added the 8, he would, out of respect of the fact that the original book was 42, it was left as that. Also, you know, even when we say, you know, how old are you? 42 hadith by Imam al-Nawawi, 8 were added by Ibn Rajab. And all of these hadiths, most of them are short but comprehensive in meaning. And many Islamic beliefs, many Islamic principles and very important issues of belief can be derived from these hadith. Now, inshallah, going through these hadith, we will try and touch upon 4 main matters, following on from the way that Sheikh Dr. Muhammad Hashim al-Tahiri did it in his explanation that we attended. So basically, 4 points will be mentioned about each hadith. 1, the reason behind the hadith. 2, the topic of the hadith, or the main topic of the hadith. 3rd, being the meanings, or some of the meanings of the wording which are in the hadith. And 4th, matters relating to the hadith. So we start by the first hadith, which is a very famous hadith, the hadith known as إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that indeed actions are judged by their intention. So it was reported by Amir al-Mu'mineen Khattab radiallahu anhu that he said, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ إِمْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَىٰ فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله والرسول فهجرته إلى الله والرسول ومن كانت هجرته للدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. So this first hadith, reported by the Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar radiallahu anhu, can be translated as that indeed actions are judged by their intention, and each person will get that which he intended. So whomsoever or whose migration was for Allah and His Messenger, then his immigration was indeed for Allah and His Messenger. And whoever's migration was for a worldly, to gain something of the worldly things, or to marry a woman, then his hijrah is to that which he made hijrah to. Now, what we should notice here is that this hadith is placed at this part of Niyat. Indeed, actions are judged by their intention. So it's been purposely put at the beginning of this book of hadith, because this is focusing on ikhlas, sincerity, and everything as we know in our religion is about sincerity. Now, the scholars have said that our religion, or this deen, is built upon 3, and some scholars say 4, well-known hadith. Now, the first is this one, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, because it's the start of all goodness. The intention is the start of everything. It's good. If you start something with a bad intention from the very beginning, it's bad, it's rotten, it's incorrect. So the scholars have said that these 3 or 4 hadith, the first one being, these are the ones that the religion is built upon, or they are the foundations of our religion. The first one, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, indeed actions are judged by the intentions, based upon the fact that everything should be sincere to Allah alone. Then they mentioned the other hadith, some of these hadith we'll come to later. مَنْ عَمَلْ عَمَلْ لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُنَا فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. Whoever does a deed that is not according to our matter, meaning the religion of Islam, the Quran, the Sunnah, it is rejected. This is the second hadith that they say the religion is built upon. The third one is that indeed the halal, إِنَّ الْحَلَالُ بَيِّنٌ وَالْحَرَامُ بَيِّنٌ, that the halal is clear and the haram is clear. And then the fourth one that they mention is from the perfection of one's religion is he leaves that which does not concern him. So regarding the first 3, which the majority of scholars say these are the 3 hadith. So we heard it's إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, actions are judged by their intention. This is because, brothers and sisters, as we know as a principle, for any act of worship, it'll only be accepted if it has what? Ikhlas, sincerity only for Allah. What is the second point? after that for every action or deed to be accepted in Islam. The i'tiba', the following of the Prophet ﷺ in doing so. Affair that is not from it, فَهُوَ رَدْ, it will be rejected. So this is in relation to the second point. And the third point, the hadith they mentioned as well, that indeed the halal is clear and the haram is clear. If someone doesn't know what is halal and what is haram, how will he be able to have this following of the Prophet ﷺ? So these are the three hadith that they mentioned, and the first one is the one we're discussing today. So if we look at the reason behind this hadith, brothers and sisters, is clear. It is that all matters must start with ikhlas. All matters must start with the sincerity to Allah and for the sake of Allah alone. And Imam Nawawi, why did he start the book, his book of 40 hadith? Why did he choose to start it with this hadith? Apart from the fact we've mentioned, that's because everything has to start with intention. But he started it following in the footsteps of the scholars like Imam al-Bukhari. The first hadith in the Sahih of al-Bukhari is this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Indeed, actions are judged by their intentions. And the subject or the topic of this hadith is the importance of ikhlas. This is the main thing we can derive from this hadith, is the importance of having ikhlas, doing things sincerely for the sake of Allah. Now, if we look at some of the meanings or some of the individual aspects of the hadith, this إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالِ الْأَعْمَالِ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, and there's another narration of another hadith, بِالنِّيَّة, which makes no difference, by intentions, by intention. Here we see the word al-a'mal. All of our deeds, all deeds are judged by the intention. So no deed can be accepted except with it has in the beginning a sincere intention. And think about it, everything must have an intention. Unless the person is insane and they're out of their mind, they don't have normal of intention. Nothing can start without an intention. And also the intention we can derive, or an aspect of intention we can derive here, is that the hadith is pointing to the fact about intention. But intention can also be, brothers and sisters, can be corrupted. So we may start, it's not referring just to the beginning of the intention. Somebody may have an intention at the beginning to do his salah completely for the sake of Allah. But after the beginning of his salah, he notices people are watching him, so he perfects his salah amazingly. Here the intention has been corrupted. And if the person was to continue for the rest of his salah with the intention only being to please those people, then his salah is completely invalid. But if during that his intention goes away for something else, but he returns it back to the correct intention, then the correct opinion is that we cannot say that this act of worship is invalid, but it's something very dangerous. So the intention is not just something, the intention is something you begin with, but it's also something that continues throughout the act that you're doing. And we have to keep ourselves in check to make sure our intention stays with ikhlas as it began with. And also, the scholars have also said there's different rewards in intention. So there is somebody who will have the intention of something that is only for the sake of Allah. So you ask him, why are you praying, brother? I am doing this only for the sake of Allah, for the reward from Allah. Brother, but what is the reward of salah? Do you know any hadith? I don't know. But I'm doing only for Allah. This is good. He has started with the great intention. His intention is correct. But the one who starts with the intention, but he also, on top of the normal intention of my action being only if he wants the reward in Jannah, he does it because he knows it's a kafara of his dhunub. He does it because he knows the people on Yawm al-Qiyamah who are people of Salah will have a special place, etc., etc. Then this is another level of intention and another higher level of being rewarded, even though it would be enough just for him to do this act with the intention of doing it only for Allah. But the more one's intention increases in doing it for this and that, the different virtues and different ways, knowing that it pleases Allah, the more virtuous the person's intention. Actions are judged by intention. Sometimes we will have an intention to do something, but through no fault of our own, we were unable to do it. So a person has a pure and sincere intention to do the Hajj pilgrimage, but he was never able to make it. Either he wasn't physically able, or he wasn't financially able. But his intention was the pure intention to do Hajj, to fulfill one of the pillars of Islam and to please only for the sake of Allah, and then he passes away. He, inshaAllah, will receive the reward of doing the Hajj because he had the intention to do so. However, he was unable to make it. And another example we see now in the current situation, how many of us we are unable to still at the moment pray in the masajid. But we used to be of the people who would do our best to pray in the masjid. So our intention is, if the masjid was open, we would be there doing our Jusatul Jama'ah. But we cannot, because for the valid safety precautions, they are currently closed. We will be rewarded for praying, inshallah, in Jama'ah, because our intention was that we wanted to pray in Jama'ah, and we were people who always used to do our best to pray in Jama'ah. Just like we wanted to pray Taraweeh in Ramadan that's just passed. We were unable to pray Ramadan, Taraweeh, should I say, in the masajid because of the pandemic. But we were people who always used to pray, do our best and pray as much as we could Taraweeh. And we have the intention to go and pray Taraweeh in the masjid, but we were unable to. Based upon our intention, we will be rewarded, inshallah, by doing the Taraweeh in our house for doing as if we did Taraweeh in the masajid, because indeed actions are judged by the intention. Now, if we look at the other part of the hadith, so we discussed now the a'mal, the deeds in general. So just to recap, brothers and sisters, remember this as a very important point. No deed, no good deed, no action of worship, nothing whatsoever can be accepted unless it has one condition: the ikhlas for Allah alone, and the second one being that it must be in accordance to the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So someone may do an act only for the sake of Allah, but he has made up some kind of worship. He says, I will do 5 rak'ah. In his heart is to do that only to please Allah. But will this be accepted? No. Because he is inventing something into this religion. And he has not implemented the second condition of his action must be in accordance and following and in line with the guidance and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What about the opposite side? Someone does an act of worship that is completely 100% in line, perfectly in line with the way that the Prophet ﷺ taught it to be done. But his intention is to please somebody or to get a financial reward for doing so. This is his main intention. Will it be accepted? No. Because he has lost the condition of what? Being only for the sake of Allah. So remember this, brothers and sisters. Only for the sake of Allah and following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Very, very important, brothers and sisters. So we've mentioned that part now. The intention in doing our acts and the fact. Then what does it say after? Indeed, acts are judged by their intention, and everybody will get what he intended for. And this is pretty straightforward. That if the person migrated to get married, then this is his intention. He is getting what he wanted. If his intention was to make business, then this is for him. This is what he intended. This is his intention, business. And it says here, first of all, whoever's hijrah, migration, is to Allah and His Messenger. What does this mean, brothers and sisters? Maybe if somebody is living in a non-Muslim country where they cannot practice their religion hardly at all. It's almost like they cannot stick to their religion because of the difficulty. And alhamdulillah, even many non-Muslim countries now, there are good communities, there are good masajid. That may not be the case, but there may be people who are in a situation where they feel like I cannot survive, or my religion will not be safe. I will not be able to be a good Muslim unless I leave this place. So it's referring to this. But what we have to understand, it's not simply this, brothers and sisters. If we look at the principle of migration in modern terms, migrating to Allah and His Messenger would have been back then, leaving the lands, coming to Mecca, coming to Medina, living amongst the Muslims. But what about in our current times, where we may all, alhamdulillah, live in Muslim countries, and we can, alhamdulillah, like here, like that. So how can we as a Muslim of today implement migration to Allah and His Messenger? It is by, brothers and sisters, by obeying Allah, following Allah's commands, staying away from that which He has made prohibited to us. It is by following the Messenger of Allah's example, following His Sunnah. It is the migration of the heart, migrating, keeping away from sins, and doing our best to do good deeds and seek knowledge. What we're doing now, brothers and sisters, is one of the best deeds that anyone can do. Trying to learn and seek knowledge and getting together to learn about the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is one of the best acts of worship that can be done. There are so many hadith about the one who seeks knowledge, that when people come together in the masajid, in the houses of Allah, to learn about Allah and His religion, that the angels come down and tranquility falls upon them, and the angels cover them with their wings, and that each and every one of those people's names are written down with Allah. And this doesn't mean, brothers and sisters, the masjid. The scholars have said for such a long time back that this is relevant to any gathering of knowledge. If you're doing it online, inshallah, we come under this hadith. If you're doing it in an Islamic, in a university, you come under this hadith. If you're doing it in a classroom, in an Islamic center, you come under this hadith of this. And there is many different hadith and mentioning of rewards, like the one who leaves his house to seek knowledge, to go until he returns back from his house. For when he left, while he was sitting in the circle of knowledge, until he returned, is like he was standing in prayer and worship. So this is how we can make the migration to Allah and His Messenger, by following them, by obeying the commands, following of Allah, following the Sunnah, migrating away and doing our best to stay away from all sins and mistakes. This is the migration. And then the hadith goes to say, whoever makes migration for a worldly affair. And of course, this doesn't mean it's haram. You may make migration to somewhere for permissible halal business. But what we do notice, brothers and sisters, is let's not be those people who make the dunya. The word dunya in Arabic. But we see people fighting over it like it is, as if it was called al-ulya, the highest. And we know that this ulya we aim for is Jannah, brothers and sisters. But we see people making dunya their main goal. What do we have in this dua we always make? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, give us the good in this world, and in the hereafter, save us from the punishment of the hellfire. So there's nothing wrong with seeking parts of the worldly life that are permissible, but this should not be our goal. We see people jeopardizing their religion for worldly. People say, I have to do this, brother. You know, if I don't do this, I'll get this kind of job, and my salary will be half. So he sells his religion, or he sells his, he sells himself and his practicing of his religion for more money. Or he makes his whole aim the dunya, and they make their whole goal to compete, and they forget the akhirah. Our religion, brothers and sisters, is a religion of a middle path. It is not. We do not go to the extreme way to the right, and we do not go to the extreme way on the left. We do not become over religious and over zealous, where we will become like a hermit and we abandon life and we abandon people. The Prophet ﷺ said that the mu'min الذي يخالط الناس خير من الذي لا يخالط الناس أو كما قال, that the believer who mixes with people is better than the one who withdraws from people. So we should have part of the dunya And if we look at the reality, brothers and sisters, this is a concept that people get confused with. What we have as halal in this dunya, wallahi, it outweighs and outnumbers that which is haram. But we always focus on, or our mind, or the shaitan and our weakness, we always focus on what's, I can't do this, I can't do that. Let's be realistic, brothers and sisters. We can't drink, for example, alcoholic drinks. Think of the tens, if not hundreds of other non-alcoholic beverages and fruit juices we can drink. We can't do certain things that people may fun do that are much better, exciting, and more beneficial even for our health to do than these. So we have to understand that in this dunya, we avoid that which is forbidden. And our main aim is for the akhirah. So we shouldn't make our life on dunya. And then we see the hadith mentions that whoever's hijrah is for a woman, then this hijrah is for what so if he migrated for the purpose of marriage, then this is what in reality his hijrah is for. So this is basically, brothers and sisters, the first hadith, an essential hadith. So just to recap, indeed actions are judged by the intention. Every act we do, brothers and sisters, for those who joined later, every act of worship must have two conditions to be accepted. The first, ikhlas, sincerity for the sake of Allah, and the second being upon the sunnah, the correct way, on the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And our actions are judged by those intentions. And whoever's hijrah, whoever's migration was for Allah and His Messenger, then it was for them. And we mentioned that could be leaving a non-Muslim country to come to a Muslim country if one can. It's not always possible to practice their religion better. If they can't do it, or they literally can't pray, they can't do the things that they should do in a non-Muslim country, and then they try to leave, for example, if it's to that extreme. But even if that's not the case, or even if you're in a Muslim country, how could you still migrate to Allah and His Messenger? We mentioned it is by migrating the one of one's heart, staying away from the forbidden, doing that which has been commanded to do, staying away from that which is forbidden, doing our best to do good deeds, to worship, to have good character, and stay away from all that which is forbidden. This is how we can, in current times, make hijrah to Allah and His Messenger, migrate to Allah and His Messenger. Then we mentioned, it mentions all those who made hijrah for the dunya. We mentioned our goal, brothers and sisters, that yes, we can take our part. There's a verse in the Quran that says, and do not forget your nasib, your portion of this worldly life. It's in the Quran. So we are encouraged to seek a portion of this worldly life in that which is halal, important. And the Jannah is what is al-uliya, the high. This is the high aim we should be aiming for. And then we mentioned the end of the hadith. Now, something I want to end on, brothers and sisters, when I thought of the word dunya, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو عابر السبيل أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet ﷺ said, be in this worldly life like a stranger or someone who is a wayfarer, someone who is passing by. What does this mean? Be in this worldly life like a stranger. Don't make this world like it is your complete comfort zone. You're 100% comfortable. This is it. This is the world. And we've heard these ridiculous statements that have been pushed out all over our youth of YOLO. You only live once. This is what it means, brothers and sisters. To be a stranger, knowing that deep down, even if you live, how long do we live, brothers and sisters? Some of us 40, some of us 50, some of us 60, some of us 70 years. So we don't make this dunya as if it's our final destination. So we act as if we are strange in it, meaning that we are here temporarily and our final abode, inshallah, will be Jannah. Inshallah. That's what we must hope for, we must aim for. And the Prophet said, Abir as-sabil, someone who is just passing through. Someone who's passing through, what does it mean? He takes the necessary things he needs in life. If you're passing through somewhere, you don't, make your main goal on building everything you can get non-stop. Your whole goal is to just get this and that and keep building and keep expanding, because you're just passing through that area. So you take what you need to live a life. Some of us may live a better life than others, but the important point is, remember that you are just passing through this worldly life, and it is not your final abode. And inshallah, we've come to the end of today's benefits derived and points of the first hadith of the book of 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, the hadith of إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Anybody who joined late, inshallah, this will stay on our YouTube channel, and we will have this lesson every Friday, inshallah, 9 p.m. UAE program, Islamic IC DXB, Islamic IC DXB, likewise on Telegram, and Islamic Information Center Dubai on Facebook for any updates for these classes and such other classes. And inshallah, if there's no questions I can see, I can't see any questions that came up. So inshallah, with that, we will end, and may Allah reward you all for joining, inshallah. Anything I've said which is correct is indeed from the tawfiq, from the permission and blessings of Allah. Anything I've said which is incorrect or mistaken is indeed from myself or from the shaitan. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.